Clear skies in our part of Texas. Very, very warm weather, and the mosquitoes are out in full force. And this is what it looked like a few minutes ago out there. We've got the last few weeks of like meteorological summer going on, and we've still got Maria out there in the Atlantic, and let's check that out. And there it is. It's a Category 3 storm, and of course that has left a trail of destruction as it passed through Puerto Rico. And what we've got there is pretty much getting to be a humanitarian disaster there. Fortunately, there's only been 10 deaths directly attributed to the storm, but most of the nation is without power. The only places that really have stable power supply are those with generators, and they have not really done a full assessment of what's going on, but the power problems there are very, very, very extensive. As I've mentioned yesterday, there were about 1,400 out of 1,600 cell phone towers. And to give you some idea how that's being ignored, I went to Google News, and at the very top, the headline was, "What Trump doesn't know, what Trump doesn't get about the NFL." So that's, I guess, where our priorities are right now. Yesterday, first day of fall, so we're getting into kind of a transition period, and fortunately, it looks like Maria is going to stay off to the east, so we're not going to worry too much about this making landfall. It may graze the Cape Hatteras area, but that's about all we're really looking for. But there's a big change out to the west, and we can see that here. Lots of clouds through the central U.S., and a much different cloud pattern out in the western U.S. compared to the east, where we have a lot of moisture. The Karsten-Houston site, which has temperature anomaly from the GFS, shows the nation is bisected. Areas west of the Rockies have temperatures below normal, and east of the Rockies above normal. And one thing that's kind of interesting is if you zoom in on the North American continent, I'm looking for something that has kind of like a North American slant. I guess I can't do that. However, you can see that the core of the coldest polar air is over Utah and Nevada. And if you go north, temperatures are actually above normal in Alaska, Yukon, and Northwest Territories. So this shows that this air here could have kind of a Pacific origin, or it could have a very brief transient Canadian polar origin there. So what we've got going on right now, let's see here. Here's the NHC map. Maria showing a Category 3, 115 mile an hour winds, 950 pressure. And there's the track, taking that off the Carolina coast there. Okay, I guess I forgot to get the McItis satellite imagery up, but I've got some other panels that we can look at. So there's the infrared imagery for Maria, showing a distinct eye. It's picked up a little bit of strength there, but it's about to head into cooler waters up to the north there. Things pretty quiet in the southeast U.S., and we're starting to get some return moisture on the high plains, and that's feeding thunderstorm activity along that Canadian front, up in the Dakotas and Nebraska, and along the dry line out in West Texas. So to actually look at the pattern, this is digital atmosphere, and the latest surface plots are looking like this. You can see the dew point temperatures are in the 70s in South and Southeast Texas. So basically from about Tyler all the way down to San Antonio, 70s, and then 60s all the way up into the Panhandle. So that's the moisture spreading up into the high plains and feeding these showers and thunderstorms out there. In the southeastern U.S., or actually the western U.S., you can see the front making very, very slow progress, moving probably about 10 knots there. And if I was to define roughly where that cold front is, definitely through Denver. Look at that, 46. Very cool air there. So we traveled down Interstate 25, 63 there at Trinidad, south wind. I think we were looking at maybe something like some of this air here is outflow air from these showers that we've got going on in eastern New Mexico, but the actual synoptic scale cold front could be running something like that right there. It looks like that continues on all the way up to Nebraska. We can see north winds there around Russell. And then once we get out towards Iowa, that's where we find the warm front there. So north of that, got a lot of cool air, westerly winds, and even at Las Vegas, we've got northwest winds there. So that's a very definite telltale sign of a polar air mass which has come through that area. All right, let's see what we have going on in the chat for tonight. Got Ron Chalfant and David Moore. Carl Berghoff is with us, and Electric Dog, Mike Bexley. We have Ryan here. Quiet weekend on this Jewish holiday for those celebrating the New Year. Ron says nice cool weather in the South California mountains. David Moore liking the music. Same with Mike Bexley. VO Joe reporting 77 degrees in his area. Mike Bexley has 92 in Columbus. Let's see if we can see some of that warm air. It has cooled down a little bit, but even at this hour, we've got upper 70s in that part of the U.S. Thunderstorm over Kevin McKinney's house. Ron Chalfant wanting to head to New Orleans there. Ryan says, sad state of affairs in our country, referring to news parties. Yeah, that's true. I was reading a little bit about the power problems there in Puerto Rico, and apparently their power company has been running at a budget deficit for decades, and supposedly they're about $1 million or $1 billion in debt there, if I read that correctly. And the rates there are some of the highest in the nation, and they have not invested in their infrastructure. And of course, Puerto Rico has had problems going on for a long time. I remember about a year ago, the legislature there was basically declaring bankruptcy. I'm not too sure how that worked out, but yeah, there's a lot of problems with the economy in that country, and now they've gone from bad to worse. Mike Bexley played in a couple of popular bands there in Columbus. Ryan says they're working to get San Juan Airport, which is good. So hopefully we can start getting some heavy-duty relief supplies into there. Support flights should start arriving by Tuesday from the mainland, so we're talking about 48 to 72 hours. Is this all done on your digital atmosphere software? Some of it is. Yeah, this is my digital atmosphere software here. And this is actually some of the... I've got that problem again. Every time I try to demonstrate the source code, I can't seem to move the window except maybe a little bit at a time. See how slow that moves? I'm trying to drag it. And anyway, I guess it doesn't really cooperate with the video capture, but this is the program that I use to generate the source code. Let me try this real quick. I decided to try to stop the program there. Well, I'll have to show you all that some other time, but this is basically Delphi. This is what I program it in. So, starting digital atmosphere. It's like the compiler crashed. Let me see if I can get that working here. Okay, yeah, see, now it works. So this shows you a little bit of what the source code looks like for a weather program like this that plots weather maps. And this is the module here that prints maps and sends them to your AppSen or your HP printer. And there's other parts of the program that actually process the METAR code. Let me see if I can bring up some of that. Yeah, you see here, parsing of many different types of standardized international codes, and parse METAR. That's going to look like this here. So you can see here, there's a code here for processing broken sky conditions, and then it pulls out the values it needs and pulls out the ceiling, and that's kind of how that works. Anyway, it's a pretty large program, and going to try to get the size of it. Anyway, yeah, I'll have to work with that later. But anyway, that's the program there. And 36 degrees at Ron Chalfont's house. Mike Bexley looking for a cool down late next week. And that can't come too soon. Am I using C or C++? Neither. I'm using Delphi, which is a Object Pascal variant. David Moore was in West Texas this afternoon. Hot, windy, and dry. And anyway, let's head on to the charts here. With the thickness or actually with the theta charts, reducing all the temperatures to sea level, it's very easy to pick out the location of that front. And there it is from north of Minneapolis through just north of Omaha. And looks like it's passed through around the Goodland area. And then it appears what has happened is it's actually kind of wrapped up like this in Colorado. Very shallow front, and it appears maybe we got a little bit of that going on right there. So definite frontal passage in Arizona. Looks like it's stalled there in western New Mexico. And then we've got some sort of triple point area in the Grand Junction area of Colorado there. So out ahead of that, kind of a warm air mass, and looks like a little rain-cooled outflow pool there. And the storms forming along the leading edge of that cold pool there, and receiving that warm, moist inflow from the Gulf. So that's kind of an explanation of what's happening weather-wise in the central U.S. And then the western U.S., this is all just driven by a combination of cold Canadian air and air from the Pacific. So putting that together with that thickness and pressure, we see something like this. So one possible solution is maybe the triple point is close to Farmington and Albuquerque out in this area. So it's either something like that or it's something like this here, one of the two. But in any case, the front is mostly through the Rockies, just has not passed New Mexico yet, and it's going to be a couple of days before that happens. The core of the cold air over northern Nevada and Idaho. So we're going to expect to find upper level troughing in that area. Okay, so there's the upper air charts. This is the 250 millibar chart up at 34,000 feet. And indeed, there's the troughing right there over Nevada and Idaho. So not too much of a surprise there. Everything is tied together, and because of that cold air in that region, that places the polar front jet from Arizona up to southeastern Wyoming and into the Ontario area. And so some of the strong upper-level winds associated with that jet helping to support the storms out in the high plains this evening. And then there's a look at the surface chart. This is the Canadian analysis, and that's showing kind of a simplified version of that frontal system. The Canadians thinking that the main baroclinic area is in the El Paso area, and I would probably disagree with that, but that's what they have going on there. And then looks like up in the northern Canadian area, very strong high pressure area in the high Arctic, and temperatures in the 20s and 30s in that area. So this is driving a little bit of a cold push southward into the U.S. itself. Okay, so there's a quick look at the upper chart up at 39,000 feet. Very strong 110 knot jet. And let's take a look at the forecast over the next week or two here. I think probably a good chart to start with is going to be the European model. So let's see what they have there, showing yeah, there it is, Maria there, 947 millibars east of the Bahamas. And then over the next couple days, we're going to see that moving towards the Carolina coast, coming very close to Cape Hatteras around Wednesday or Thursday. And then the lowest pressure we see with Maria looks like it bottoms out at 941 tomorrow night, and then it starts filling very slowly. And then we see very strong recurvature out into the Atlantic by Thursday or Friday. And the models have been pretty consistent with this recurving path, so it's looking like the likelihood that's going to head towards Long Island or Cape Cod is kind of low at this point. And here's that frontal system up to the north and to the west. Looking something like that this morning. And then by tomorrow morning, very little movement. Looks like one little wave moves into the Dakotas. But the majority of the pressure rises are still very far to the west in the Great Basin area and Wyoming. So it's going to be a couple of days before we see this cold push come into Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. So this is Monday morning. And then finally by Tuesday we see it entering Oklahoma and the North Texas area. For example, in Dallas, pressure is about 10-12 millibars. Now the pressure at this point is 10-15 to 10-16 millibars on Wednesday, so it's a very slow rise. And then by Thursday morning, it's still rising very slowly, only 10-18 millibars. 10-30 millibar high well up to the northwest. And then it looks like, yeah, it's just, we're just seeing the cold air just very slowly working its way southward. Not a very large push there. And even by Friday, DFW pressure is only about 10-18 millibars. But looks like later in the period, this is a pretty strong high that comes southward. And then by Sunday, you can see things are already up to 10-24 millibars. So it looks like a very cool weekend to start October. The origin of this air looks like it's way up in northern Canada there. So that's actually a piece of this system here coming southward. So it looks like a pretty distinct change to more of a fall pattern. And let's check out the tropical flow. And we do that by looking down on the Gulf Coast area. And yeah, we do see kind of like a recycled, kind of a combination polar tropical feed coming up from the southeast for the first part of the week. And then after that, looks like a northerly component starts taking over around Thursday. Now you can see a northerly gradient over the weekend. Northerly gradient, and only by the third or fourth do we start seeing maybe a little bit of return flow coming up from the Rio Grande. And then taking a look at the GFS. That brings Maria just off the Cape Hatteras area. GFS doing the same thing it was showing yesterday, kind of touching Cape Hatteras there on Thursday and Friday. And that's probably going to be like a Cat 1 to Cat 2 storm. And then we see it departing pretty quickly there on Friday. So a lot of consistency there between the GFS and the European model. And then going back, I'm looking at this front here. Looks like that's entering North Texas around Wednesday. A little bit of shower activity in West Texas associated with the little bit of a jet, a little bit of a feed of tropical moisture coming up from the Gulf there. And then it looks like by Friday, that's when we really see the push of cold air coming southward there. So we got about, looks like about 4 to 5 more days of warm weather here before we start seeing the cold air pushing southward. Then just kind of a mild pattern. And then we see a new frontal system coming together in the northwest U.S. around the 4th. That looks pretty potent there. Pretty strong cold air mass. And that crosses the Rockies, emerging out into the plains around the 7th. So that could be a period of severe weather on the plains. The weekend of the 7th and 8th there. And then it still looks like continued troughing out to the west. So it's starting to look to me like we're kind of breaking that pattern of warm air out in the eastern U.S. Or did I say cold air? What I mean is we used to have a lot of cold air out in this area here. Temperatures below normal. It looks like we've broken that, and now we're seeing warmer than average temperatures on the East Coast here for the next week or two here. So trough west and ridge east. That's kind of the pattern we're going to have in about a week or two here. And then this is the very end frame on the 9th. Very strong push of cold air, and once again, looks like we're feeding moisture and warm conditions up towards this frontal zone and thunderstorms in West Texas there. So this is pretty far out. And the GFS still going for some sort of tropical system, but it's backed that off probably about a day or two there. Okay, let's see. That's probably about all I got for tonight. Appreciate you all watching, and let me take one more look at the chat here. Wow, Joker roasting in Denver last week, now 49 degrees and rain. Yeah, I wish we had some of that here too. Above average ocean water temperatures in the Caribbean from Ryan. Alright, so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and be done for now, and we'll see you all tomorrow night. And have a good evening, and take care of y'all.